Let's get it. This is Life's Essential Ingredients with Jeff and a Mike, where we hope to inform, inspire, and transform lives, one essential ingredient at a time. Welcome to the show. All right, listeners, here we go. We back again. Unfortunately, I'm short my mic. He is still under the weather. We've been recording a few of these episodes lately and then just dropping them real quick. So hopefully you appreciate that. If you are new, welcome to the show. This is Life's Essential Ingredients. It's part of C4 Leaders, which is a nonprofit to utilize the pizza making process to create space for our companions to be seen, heard, and loved. We also write children's books, obviously host a show, and then we use the most amazing handmade, hand-tossed sourdough pizza to bring out the best in each other. If you're interested in checking us out in that space, go to pizzadays.org. Here we go, season 4, episode 18, and we have Peter Teuscher coming from Hamburg, Germany. A little bit of a crazy story. I had one guest couple seasons ago, Christina Zanato, and she was the shark dancer, and she had sent me an email like 5 minutes before the show saying, "Hey Jeff, I'm sorry, but I'm stuck out at sea." And I've never had that before. And then Peter was supposed to come on a couple days ago. And he's like, "Hey Jeff, I'm sorry, but I'm in Germany. We got some crazy weather, and we just had a big lightning strike on the train tracks, and I can't get home." So life happens, but here we are. So excited to have Peter. And I always like to direct the guests to where to find you, and just go to his website. And it's Peter, I'll spell it all the way out, Teuscher.com. And it's PeterTeuscher.com. And it's an incredible site. He's got a great blog. Peter also is a podcaster, so make sure you kind of search him in that space. Just use his name and Rethinking Happiness. So let's get into about our guest. Peter Teuscher is a seasoned life, business, basketball coach, leadership trainer, and author whose book, Rethinking Happiness and the Beliefs That Guide You, breaks down the complexities of happiness. With a unique blend of empathy, insight, and practical strategies, Peter is committed to helping others navigate their own path to happiness and success, offering a refreshing perspective on how individuals can achieve their own definition of happiness. What sets Peter apart is not just professional expertise, but also his personal journey of growth and resilience. Overcoming battles with depression and anxiety, Peter has emerged as a beacon of inspiration, showcasing transformation is possible no matter the current state of your life. Peter, thanks for sharing your many gifts with the people you serve, having the courage to uproot your life in Canada in order to reach for your dreams, and for being our guest on Life's Essential Ingredients. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm grateful to be with you.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. And I don't know if we'll get into any hoop, but I love having another basketball coach. I am shook that my Pasha is not here because he's currently coaching a high school team. I'm not, but I always have my foot somewhat in the game. But we'll see if that comes up. But we always start every episode with a thought of the day, which is a quote that I pick after researching you. And this one really jumped out at me, and it's from Dolly Parton. And and it's a simple one, but deep. And here it goes. Find out who you are and then do it on purpose. Why would I pick that one for you?
Well, if you've read my bio and my website, you know I've been on quite a journey in rediscovering who I am, and that's a big part of the work that I do. And then translating that into actually living it. So yeah, it was quite a journey in my own life when I lived in Canada. Had a very different life, and now I really focus on helping others make that journey as well. So I think, I think the quote definitely resonates with me.
Nice, I love it, and we're 100% listeners on selecting these quotes that kind of resonate with the guests, and I try and take a lot of pride. And I just love quotes, just because I think they're a good way to kind of get grounded for the day. And I've used them in so many different parts of my life. So glad that one hit home with you. And I don't know, I don't subscribe to a lot of emails. And this is crazy because I prepared for this show. We were supposed to record it, I don't know, a few days ago at least. And I've had all the notes, everything already done. But I do subscribe to the Daily Good. And listeners, I don't know if you're familiar with that site, but it's just a real positive site where they're trying to send good messages. And you can just go dailygood.com, or it might even be .org. And crazy, the thought of the day for them, which is just their quote, and then they have a story that goes with it, is this quote. Today, if you go to that site, dailygood, either .com or .org, you're going to see this quote from Dolly Parton. I said, oh man, this is going to be a great show, because that's never happened to me. And I didn't even I found this quote in a book that I was reading, and to see it pop up was, oh man, that's so cool. So Peter, let's get into this thing. And I always like starting out just to give the guests a chance to get to know you. And so this is a little bit of a broad question, and take it any which way you like. But what was life like growing up?
Wow, that's going way back. Well, I was very privileged in that my dad was in the military, so in my first couple of years of life were in Germany, and got to experience that culture. Moved to Canada when I was 4. A completely new environment, and I think just being able to, and then starting off in Ottawa, then moving to Vancouver, and I think it was just really interesting through the diverse experiences that I had. Getting to know both cultures, learning 2 languages, and my parents traveled a bit, so I got to see the world at a very young age. Not everybody gets to fly in a plane. Well, maybe this day and age, but back when I was growing up, not everybody got to fly in a plane when they were 4 years old. So,
man, that's awesome. And then a weird kind of question for you. At the time, you were only 4, so you might not be all the way aware, but moving, maybe you didn't get to plant your roots at the time, and you're like, oh man, I'm kind of having fun here. And then now all of a sudden you're picking up and going to another country. It must have been something hard at the same time, but then fast forward, to your adult years, you're like, man, I might not have really appreciated that for what it was at the time, but now it's given me all these, I'll call them essential ingredients in my life that have really shaped my life when I didn't even know it was getting shaped. I don't know if I'm right or wrong.
Well, for sure. For good and I was going to say for good and bad, but I think everything's for good, because the challenges we face in life shape who we are, and overcoming them. But for me, my grandmother, I got to spend when I was little living in Germany. So my on that side of my family, she was probably the most positive person in recollection in my life. And so having that that intense, very close time with her at an early age, I think really did a lot of good for me. I think moving to a new country with young parents who had their own challenges, that definitely sets up a dynamic where young parents might not be as patient with their children as the children might need. And so, I struggled with some things emotionally. I was a pretty sensitive child, and I think that tested my parents' patience at times. And so, real ups and downs. I think the journey that I had through my childhood and my teenage years, which were kind of tumultuous, but then overcoming a lot of that, I think really shaped who I am today. But it wasn't until I actually understood mental health a little better and got some therapy that I realized, my first episodes of depression were like at seven years old, when I was in grade 2. And so when I think about back to my childhood, I didn't realize the things that were traumatic for me as a kid, even though as an adult looking back, they don't seem, my life was good. I didn't go without. I had a mom that stayed at home and prepared meals and gave me the best lunches of anybody in the classroom and that kind of stuff. So, but when you look back and then you look at it through the eyes of a child, you start to recognize, so these are where some of my fears come from, and so on, and then dealing with those as an adult and then overcoming them, that was extremely liberating for me. So just processing the childhood. So my childhood was was good and good, and it was challenging at the same time, but I'm super happy with who I am now, so I have no regrets.
I love it. And yeah, pretty powerful to have your grandma. And what was one thing that she did? You said the most positive person. That's a statement, the most positive person in your life. Give me one like grandma kind of story or just something that she would say or do that, all these years later, and you kind of lit up a little bit when you were mentioning that, and yeah, just take me back to that space real quick.
Yeah, my grandma was a person. She was super patient. It was easy for me to make her laugh,
Mm.
and it was less about. Oh, well, she was just a master in that. Well, she learned to cook, but she could do it. We used to say she could do anything with flour and water, And so just those times in the kitchen as she was baking or making some food, and we would just talk, and she was just so attentive. She engaged with you like she just wanted to hear every word you were going to say to her. And there's not many people that you meet in life that really that engage you in that deep a way. And I just she gave me the that feeling that I could do anything. Like, you have that person that you meet in life that really believes in you so much that it makes you believe more in yourself. And that's the kind of person that she was for me.
Mm. And I'm going to take us right back for the first time. Find out who you are and then do it on purpose. So
Yeah.
grandma knew who you were before you knew, and then gave you the strength and courage to, all right, Peter, go do your thing. Let's go.
Yeah, I think that was part of what drew me back to finding my roots in Europe, because she passed away when I was just 19. So and I was in Canada. I didn't get to see her before she passed, but I think that just that made me hold on even more to those experiences that were kind of for me too few and far between as I got older because the distance between us. But I think that memory and sort of that role model or that just that memory of that kind of state she was in when she was with you and all of that really impacted me in such a positive way. And it wasn't until years later where I saw some of the things that she saw in me. It took me sort of clearing out a lot of the baggage and all the negative beliefs I developed that then brought me back to seeing, now I can see what she saw in me back then.
Find out who you are and then do it on purpose, man. Let's go.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the show is called Life's Essential Ingredients. I know you're coaching and helping so many people develop themselves. The question is, how do you do that? And in more kind of the context of what are those ingredients that you put into your life on the daily that put you in a position to live your life on purpose, so to say.
Yeah, I think some fundamental ingredients, to use your words, are the thoughts that you think and the beliefs that you cultivate. I've found in getting out of sort of my darkest places in my past, I realized that fundamentally the biggest change that I made was in the beliefs that I had, the core beliefs, and the habitual ways that I think about life and about myself. And when you can learn to change that, then it has tremendous effects on your life because we see the world through the filter of our beliefs, and we believe a lot of the things that we think, and our thoughts are often false and hold us back. And so I think that's helping people change that is a big part. I really like to help people create and people shy away from the word philosophy and but we all have a philosophy. From the time we were old enough to think, we were putting together beliefs about ourselves, the world, and our place in it. And so I think that's just such an important place to start. And I will quote Morgan Wooten, who I probably you don't need to
No,
any explanation of who he is,
no.
but he was one of the when I was just getting into coaching, I read his book about coaching high school basketball. And, he starts the book by saying to be a good basketball coach, you need a coaching philosophy, because without that, you lack the roadmap to guide you to where you want to go. And I believe the same is true about life, right? So you need to create for yourself, curate this philosophy that supports you rather than standing in your way. And that's fundamentally how I help people. But I work systemically. So there's lots. Systemically means I don't just, it's a holistic approach. I don't just say, okay, if we do this, we'll get here. It's really looking at a lot of different components, including your beliefs, your thinking habits, and then a lot of the other elements of your life, and getting all that in harmony to line up with your values.
Yeah, that's deep. That's a whole show in itself, and we'll maybe jump into that in a little bit. But what would be one belief that you use? You get up, this morning. I know it's late at night over there for you now, but you get up each morning. What's a belief that you're telling yourself, a thought that you're putting into your head that you're going to take action to, that you probably, as part of your mantra, whatever it is, that you get yourself going? Maybe there's a listener say, man, I don't have these beliefs. And maybe you can share one of yours to maybe give somebody some thoughts.
Yeah, I usually, well, I have a morning ritual. I have an evening ritual. I think those are good habits to have, but I try to hit the reset button on my beliefs when I first start. So I do that through meditation, and meditation is just this great way of finding some separation between yourself and a lot of the habitual thoughts that you have. But the most common negative beliefs that people have are I'm not good enough, or I'm not worthy, right? And so when it's not even that you're aware of those beliefs, but when you recognize that the thoughts you're having or the actions reflect that belief, that's when you can take action, right? And so if there's, if you had planned to go on a run or planned to do some exercise, and you catch yourself going, no, I don't really feel like it. That's just that inner resistance, and that's you not willing to do something good for yourself, right? Because you'll feel better afterwards, right? And so you look for the things that happen in your life that reflect sort of those negative beliefs. Like, I can't do it. This isn't who I am. We have a lot of these beliefs about who we are, about this identity. And I think those are the beliefs we need to look out for, the beliefs that support us rather than the ones that stand in our way. Because if you believe, I can't do this today, or I'm not up for this today, well, you're up for anything if you have the right state, the right mindset.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I love it. And obviously that's what you're doing with your business. And so what got you into, in coaching? I'm not talking about basketball, but coaching, for your clients, and just leadership, and even the podcasting. What got you into that space?
Well, if you want to go right to the beginning of it, the seed was planted when I was coaching basketball, because there was, you'll know this, I had a couple of players that, you have those deeper conversations with outside of the gym, that maybe need some kind of counseling or some kind of mentoring. And I really loved that. I remember one player who, I had to, warn him that he might not be on the team if he didn't show up to class and he didn't get his grades up. And this guy, turned things around. And I remember I wasn't coaching him anymore, but he called me at graduation. He said, "Coach, I know I'm not going to be a pro athlete, but I turned my grades around and I'm going to go into sports medicine." And this is the guy that was struggling to, make passing grades. And I was just so proud of the guy. And he gave me credit for that, but he did it all himself. But just those interactions that made it so worthwhile. So that stuck with me for years. When I got into the corporate, in Canada, my brother and I had a business, sold it, moved over to Europe, got into the corporate world. And then I started in leadership's roles, and you start to coach the people that you're trying to lead, right? And then I did some sales training, sales coaching, that kind of stuff. And I realized I had far more of a passion for that than just helping companies earn a lot of money. And so to be a better leader, I actually I started taking coaching courses, NLP, different modalities. And then finally, I got my systemic coaching certification, and that was back 2012, 2013. And I just built it up from there. But yeah, it was a step-by-step process, like a lot of things in life, that seed was planted way back when, and it kind of continued to nag at me. But back when I was coaching basketball, I didn't know what the kind of coaching I'm doing now even was. I'd never heard of it before. And so I just built on my experience. And I think the combined experience of leading people and then learning to help people of every walk of life, I think that just became so fulfilling. I realized every coaching session that I had in those early days, and even now, I just felt so great afterwards. It's like I would do this for free, and so that's when you're on the right track.
I love it. And that's kind of like, I mean, this show is about you, but I'll give it just a quick little, yeah, we're speaking the same language, and C4 Leaders is a nonprofit, and we charge for what we do, but everybody that's involved we do it for free. So we are doing, exactly what you're saying. And our payday is just feeling so good at the end of the thing. And then now to mix in, right before COVID, I decided to change. I was doing the leadership in C4 are the values of how I live my life. Communication, chemistry, consistency, and creativity will be my philosophy, according to Coach, Morgan Wooten. And I do have his book. If I could reach it, I would show you, but it's right over there. It's a great book. It's just so fun to bring people together and see them, make changes around it. Like it almost has nothing to do with you, and it's everything just resides within people already. It's just like helping them get out of their own way to just tap into what is natural in all of us. And I think that's getting a little bit harder and harder with so many other distractions that come, but why the work is so important to do, because I think the more and more, that we turn to other things, the further potentially we get away from finding our true self, but the more valuable it is to have people like you and C4 Leaders that are like, you know what, we're going to slow things down and help people get back to the core, to use your words, their core beliefs of who they are. And I think those, are kind of universal for the most part, that we all do kind of want the same thing. It's just maybe we go about it, getting it in a different way. But that's my 2 cents on it. But let's get into, you've used this word a couple of times, systemic. Yeah. And then this time you talked about systemic coaching. I just want to make sure the listeners are following what you mean by that.
Yeah, so systemic thinking comes from actually one of the first guys that really popularized it was a guy named Peter Senge, American, who wrote The Fifth Discipline. And it's just a way of looking at life, at the world, and at problem solving more specifically, in a way that you look at something. A system is Senge calls it a feedback loop. You do something, you put something out in the world, and you get feedback, and then you identify where that's coming from. But the systemic approach kind of looks at you identify a system and you look at the whole thing, right? So we're a system. We have got an immune system and nervous. We're systems on top of systems, but also people with interacting with another. We have political systems, but we also within a workplace, within a team, what have you. And so you just start to recognize the different elements of that system, recognize the relationships between them, and then take different perspectives on that to understand how everything interacts with one another. And so you could do this for a concept, you can do it for a group of people, you can do it for any number of things. And I think the world would be a better place if we took a more systemic approach to trying to solve problems like the environment or whatever, or even our own emotional challenges that we have, because there's so many factors at play. And so the thing is, a lot of times we try to approach problems as if they were complicated, right? And people use complicated and complex interchangeably, but complicated is something that you can break down and understand it. It may be, like a car engine. It's complicated, but you can, if you break it down to its simplest parts, you'll be able to figure it out somehow. Whereas complex things, you can't reduce it down and figure it out because there are so many variable parts that you can't always predict what they're going to do. And so that it's this holistic approach, and one of the core principles of and that's another thing. Systemic approach works on principles rather than these structured rules that have a very fixed way of doing things. But a real core principle is, like changing your perspective. So zooming in and zooming out, and then looking at things from different angles. And I think the coaching process is one where we accompany someone on their change process. And so by asking the right questions, to helping them sort of maybe ask questions they weren't willing to ask or didn't think to ask, we get to sort of the core things that are going on within them, or we get them to see the life and the changes they're trying to make from different angles and different perspectives. Because sometimes we get so in the weeds where, you can't see the forest for the trees. So all we can see is the problem. So we can no longer see the solution, right? And so that's the systemic approach. It really works on those principles. I hope I've made sense there in my explanation.
For sure. No, and I love it. And I don't know if I told you before, we got on air or not, but I love just using the word holistic and systemic, because I'm a nurse is what I did for 29 years. And so we're definitely speaking the same language there. You need to look at the whole patient and the whole disease process, what's going on, if you're going to try and help them live a healthy life. And speaking of healthy, congrats on your book. I know that came out the 22nd of February of this year, Rethinking Happiness and the Beliefs That Guide You. So make sure listeners go check that out. And again, you go to his website or anywhere else you buy a book. And Peter's website, again, is Peter Teuscher, but it's TEUSCHER.com. Love to support him in that space. But get into the book and tell me what inspired it. Get the listeners hyped up to go out and get it, and how you potentially use it with your clients and your life.
Absolutely. So there were a few different motivations for writing the book. I've been kind of accumulating my thoughts over the years in writing my blog, and I think I really take a line from Stephen Covey, who talks about, when you learn something new, teach it to someone else, and it'll anchor it more deeply within you. So when I learn something new, I try and write about it, and I try to teach it to other people, and that's kind of accumulated over the years. So it's it's a desire to pass on my knowledge and understanding. But I also found through coaching that people would come to me and say, look, I've done these things. Maybe they've been to college and they've gotten their degree, they've gotten a career. Maybe they have a family and kids, whatever your goal or your striving for success leads you to. And they come to me and say, I've done all these things and I'm still not happy. Right. And so we look at it and they've checked all these boxes that society says, this is what happiness is. And through that, we realized actually they weren't completely living in alignment with their values, or they had some deeper desire to do something else, but they were pursuing security, or they're more driven by some of their fears or whatnot, or they were trying to fulfill the hopes and dreams of someone else, like their parents. And so the book really, for one, helps you look at what does happiness mean to you, and then looks at ways that you actually stand in the way of your own happiness, because it's there for you in every moment. Happiness is in the moment, and you can experience it in so many different ways. But a lot of times we limit ourselves and stand in our way. And then the book takes a very coaching approach in that every chapter that I look at different topics and areas that contribute to your happiness, I have a series of questions at the end of every chapter except for one. And those are meant to help you reflect, because as a coach, I don't think I can give you all the answers you're looking for, but I can certainly help you figure out the right answers for you, right? So you'll discover them for yourself on that journey. And that's what the book is striving to do.
I love the books that have action items that make you kind of just like Covey. I love Covey. We definitely have similar people that we love to learn from. But I love the books that kind of, in a good way, put you in a position to make a choice to enhance your learning and process it. And self-reflection and just self-awareness and self-love is something that's just so vital to our growth and development, and then vital to each of us achieving happiness, whatever that is for us. And I guess that'd be my next question is, what is your definition of your current definition of happiness, maybe, and have you seen it change over the years? Even maybe, and I know you just wrote the book, but maybe has it altered a little bit?
Well, I think my beliefs in general always evolve. I have some core beliefs that have stuck with me for a long time, but the way I look at happiness now, because certainly happiness is a feeling, but our feelings I look as this kind of inner guidance system, that helps us to navigate we think that we're making choices and navigating the world through our kind of conscious thinking and the facts and data that we have all around us, but really we're far more driven by the stuff. If you think of yourself as the iceberg model, where there's the tip of the iceberg is what you see, but really we operate far more from what's below the surface, and that's our beliefs, our values, our experiences, our trauma, our biases, all these things that are kind of below the surface. And so your feelings will then help give you an indication of whether you're in alignment with your needs and your values. And so for me, happiness is that feedback we get, right? So it's this feedback loop. So if we're in a happy place, then we're doing something right in terms of the choices we're making, the actions we're taking, or the way we're perceiving the world. If you look at the world from the right angle, you can find a way to be happy, right? But also, if you are continuing to take action or make choices that make you unhappy, then it's time to look at those, right? So I see happiness as this real valuable feedback we get from life in terms of, are we fulfilling our deepest needs? In terms of deepest needs, in terms of the way Maslow talked about, that self-actualization.
Yep, the hierarchy of needs. Yep, Maslow. That's a huge nursing theorist. That you learn and use all the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I love this feedback loop, and you've talked about that several times. And in my mind, it just gets me to thinking, all right, that little voice in our head that we all have. And then I know you also talked about most of the time we're wrong. And there's been all kind of research about 47% of the time what we think is not really accurate. But I want to tie this into kind of communication as a skill, and even communication of what we are saying to ourselves. It's to be a two-parter, and then kind of communication and how we're communicating with others. Because I do think if you just break down the game of basketball, and any high-level player has to be amazing at the fundamentals of the game, regardless of how you got to have incredible footwork, you got to have incredible vision, got to have incredible rhythm and timing and anticipation. Part of those would be fundamentals that you have to work on every day. And I think communication is just one of those life's fundamentals that I don't know if we spend enough time really kind of enhancing that skill set in all of us. And do you have any tips? I know I'm kind of talking a little bit now, but any tips on helping the listeners like work on that fundamental skill set?
Absolutely. I'm glad you pointed towards the inner communication, not just the outer communication. So maybe we'll address the first one first. And there's a number of psychologists and different people who've talked about the inner voice, the inner narrator. We all have this voice in our head that is giving commentary, is making judgment. It's just telling us this story of what's going on. And the thing is, if we listen to that story, it distracts us from what we're actually observing and being aware of. So I think getting into a practice of don't believe everything you think. Getting into a practice where you can find some separation, because that is all about awareness, right? Self-awareness. One of my big coaching mottos is awareness allows change. You bring these things to the surface, then it gives you the ability to change them. And so self-reflection is such an important piece for that communication within and the communication without. So when you start to identify negative thoughts that you repeatedly have, that you can, for one, you'll identify a belief that's probably behind that, but that is usually getting in the way. Like, if we want to go back to the basketball and sports analogy, if you go to the free throw line and you're like, I don't know if I'm going to make it, and you question yourself, you doubt yourself, you're probably going to miss that shot. I always say, that the thing that made Jordan and Kobe so great is they believed they could hit every shot they were going to take, right? And so it's that self-doubt, that questioning, that is the communication internally that is important to get a grip on. And you can do that. I work a lot with affirmations. So if you identify in your life thoughts that repeat over and over that are negative, that are not serving you, then you define a statement for yourself that's the opposite. It needs to be believable to you. It needs to be as if it was true in this moment. And then if you can repeat that, whenever those thoughts come up, they will become less and less. And so you just got to have that in your back pocket, ready to go. When those thoughts are coming, you have your mantra or your statement or your affirmation, and that will then start to reduce those thoughts. Because, our brain is this network, and you think one thought and you'll attract a whole bunch of related thoughts to you. And then if you have a statement ready that's going to counter those, they'll fade away, right? I like the analogy of, if you walk through this path on the through the forest, but you don't like where it's headed, then you start to walk a new path, and eventually it takes a while, but you'll create a new path for yourself, and the old one will grow over if you don't walk it anymore, right? So the same thing goes with those firing neurons in your brain. You're just trying to take them on a new path. So in terms of the inner communication, I think recognizing that your thoughts aren't true and all the time, and that just recognizing the thoughts that are in your way, and then finding a way to reduce those and get on to some more positive ways of thinking. In terms of the external communication, I think it all starts with listening first and foremost. I know that's one thing on the basketball court, having a level of awareness is court awareness of your other players. That's really important. But you can do that in anything, in relationships and business. If you learn to communicate well, it usually starts with listening and being aware of what's going on, reading the other person's body language and so on, and then listening first, and then responding from there. Because a lot of times when we're having these conversations, we're thinking about, oh, here's what I want to say next, and we're not fully engaged in what that other person is saying. So listening is a skill, and you can practice with this with anyone. Try to get someone to if someone is going to tell you a story of something that's happened to them, try not to say anything and let them tell their complete story, and then try telling that story back to them and see how good a listener you are. It's an exercise I do in workshops with people, and you that really makes you aware of how much the brain is working while you're trying to listen. And then the other thing that about communication that gets in the way is our emotions, right? So especially if something's really important to us or we're really passionate about it, you'll find that emotions will really get in the way of communicating clearly. And so I really love Marshall Rosenberg, who unfortunately has passed away, but he talks about nonviolent communication. That's kind of what he's known for. But he has this 4-step process where, first of all, you start with what can you observe, right? So without judgment, so without making a judgment on what's happening, what's observable to me right now, and then from there you ask yourself, okay. How do I feel? Like, what's happening? How does that make me feel? And then ask yourself, what do I need? And then formulate it in terms of a request, or it could be a question. It can be, something that you need someone else to do. And then you're taking the emotion out of it, and you're getting to sort of the core of the real issue. And when you can, when you can have control of that inner world, then you'll be more concise and clear in the way you communicate to the outer world. So he talks about that process in terms of conflicts, but I think it's such a valuable tool to use in any situation, because someone else can come to you really, they can be in a bit of a panic, they can be emotional, and it really helps if you can stay calm and be objective about what you're seeing, and turn that into, okay, what's this doing within me? And now what do I want to say about it? Or what do I want to ask? Or what do I want to request? That's such an effective way, whether it's at work, in a sport, because, sports can be very emotional, and particularly in your own personal relationships. It's a process I try to use myself as well as I can. I'm not perfect by any means, because life is this ongoing journey of evolution and improvement. So,
Oh man, you said so much. Let me see if I can just try and get a couple of thoughts in there. And one book that jumped out at me when you were talking about, I don't know if you've ever read Nancy Kline's The Promise That Changes Everything.
I haven't read the book, but I know of her work. Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely, listeners, recommend if you're trying to work on your communication skills. And really, it is listening. I agree 1,000% with you. That's a really good book. And then I love going back to Covey, the fifth habit, seek first to understand, then to be understood.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Really jumped out at me. I love Marshall Rosenberg. I've been taking notes. I hope you don't. I mean, we started this podcast to try and help one person. Usually that's me. I'm already on my third page of notes. So when you're talking and I'm looking down, it's not because I'm on my phone. I got that sucker not even around. And it's just because I just love to learn and just take something from each and every episode. But I love that. And then now to a question kind of for you to contradict, even though I totally agree with everything that you said. One of the other books that I just read was Michael Singer's book about surrendering. And I'm going blank on the title right now, but basically it's a surrender experiment.
Yeah.
And I guess my question would be, so many times we want life to be happy and perfect. And to be honest, most of the time it's not. And is there any value in what I would say, kind of letting things marinate, a little bit, so you can kind of self-reflect and see, what's going on in that space with your emotions? How'd you get here? Kind of surrendering to what you're feeling and to what life has given you to deal with in this moment, and then trying to get in and do all the other stuff that you talked about. Sometimes I feel like if we don't kind of experience some of the struggle and the hardship and the losses, to go bring it back to basketball and really look at our own accountability in that space, because we're not perfect. We're going to make lots of mistakes. And if we don't ever kind of self-evaluate, then how are we ever going to get better unless they hire you to be their coach, or in some space where people can give them some authentic and genuine feedback? And I think that's a whole nother show in itself, but I'll let you answer kind of what I've been just rambling on about.
Yeah. Well, if you can always stop me if I ramble on too long on one topic, because I sometimes give long answers, but there's a ton of stuff that comes to mind there. I think there's, it's a very stoic philosophical perspective to look at life in terms of what am I in control of? And it was Epictetus talked about, well, the only thing I control are my thoughts, so that's the thing he focused on. I like to be a little bit more proactive than that, but I love the philosophy of Thich Nhat Hanh, who just recently passed away, or was this year. But he has a very simple approach to whenever you're faced with anything in life. He has these 3 steps: pause, breathe, smile. And what he's talking about there is obviously getting control of your state. And the other guy who talks a ton about state is Tony Robbins, right? So he's one of the godfathers of coaching and personal development. But he talks about things in terms of state, story, and strategy. And so I think you're right. You start with, what state am I in? Am I in a state where I can make a good choice right now? And if not, then it's time to take a step back and get myself into that state. And then he talks about story. That's all these beliefs and all this stuff that's in your history that's bringing you here, because from your story comes a lot of your strategy. So that's such a big reason why I work on people's core beliefs, is because we have these beliefs that that are there that we may not even be aware of, and then they have then caused us to see the world in a way to create strategies for dealing with situations in our life. And it may have worked in the past. And even if it's no longer working, we still apply the same strategies. And so that's why we end up, getting to these places that aren't fulfilling us, aren't making us happy, and in some ways, really limiting our potential in life. So yeah, that state story strategy is a really good one. And for me, when it comes down to the way I act, the way I react, the way I make choices in life, I have a really simple way of looking at it. It's just a binary for me, and it may not work for everyone. But for me, I ask myself in communication or in the choices I'm making, is this made out of love or out of fear? And so for some, love is maybe too esoteric a word, but I look at it, am I making it from a positive motivation or a negative motivation, right? So love and fear, that's that contrast for me. And the thing is, the choices we make out of fear will never get us where we want to go. Fear can be an incredible motivator for sure, but I don't look at fear as necessarily a negative, because fear it's not about the fear, it's how you respond to it. And so it can be a great learning tool for us. But when we make choices that are motivated out of fear, I find that really, or when we say words, when we say things motivated out of fear, it can be hurtful, it can be unproductive in a conversation, and so on. And so that really helps me to look at sort of the choices that are in front of me and respond to them. So yeah, so I hope I still answered your question. That was a bit long-winded way of getting there.
Definitely, I loved it, and you just took me. I mean, I'm learning so much in this pizza space, and there's just so many parallels to when we're doing our stuff, but when you were talking about, may have worked in the past, it's fun, because what we do is, people actually make the pizza, and it's homemade, hand tossed, sourdough pizza. I'm not trying to make you hungry, or listeners,
I love pizza,
but yeah, the pizza is good. But can we slow down and think about, well, what are those ingredients that I'm putting, onto my pizza? Who put them there? Who put those in my life? Yeah. Do I even like the taste of that? Or is it something that I've just been doing out of habit? And can I make a different choice if I can slow down? And then you start applying that to the business, whose ingredients, are those that we're putting into our life and into our body every single day? And where is my kind of ownership of those and the nurturing of those, or not? I won't get carried away, but there's so much cool stuff that comes out from actually being on the back of a truck, having a fire, sitting there talking, working these things out, and then helping people get out of their own way, and hopefully finding a life worth living, and going to work and building this powerful culture that allows us to bring out the best in each other, and I'm so glad that you're, in your space coaching. And we got to wrap this up here pretty quick. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I do want you to kind of highlight to the listeners, and we've been giving your website, but if someone's like, man, I'm really enjoying what Peter is sharing and love his story, walk them through what working with you kind of looks like, and the best way that they could do that, and maybe even share a success story. And then I got a couple other questions, and we'll wrap this baby up.
Sure, absolutely. Like I say, I work systemically, but one of the first things I do then is to try and get a holistic view of the state of someone's life. So there's a few different tools you can use. I use a wheel of life, and we kind of do a self-evaluation of the different elements of a person's life. Even if they come to me for a very specific reason, I like to look at the context of it. So we start with a measurement. I really like to look at people's values, and I have a few different tools we can look at to identify sort of your core values. So some people have a hard time getting it down to just 10. If we can, we even try and get it down to 5, because we have lots of values. And I had a recent conversation where someone said, well, my values have changed over time. Probably not. You still have the values. It's just you have a different emphasis, right? So when you're younger, maybe you might have freedom and security in your scope of values, but as you're younger, maybe you have more emphasis on the freedom, and as you get older and you have a family, security, maybe there's a more focus on that. To just give one example, so. I look at values because values drive a lot of our behaviors, and whether we're conscious of them or not, it drives a lot of the decisions we're making. And sometimes when we're unhappy in life, in the job we're doing or in the relationships we have, it'll be because we're doing things or acting in a way that is in conflict with our values. So that's a big piece of that feedback, for happiness feedback that I talk about. And from there, we then look at the areas that you want to address first and foremost. And maybe it's really clear for some people and not for others. So it's this process of getting people really clear. What do I want? And then from there, we figure out how to get there. And so it's always a change process. But we start with the big picture, then we look at the areas that need the attention, and then we look at how that interacts with the rest of our lives and what needs to change on multiple levels. Because it's not usually, okay, if I just change this one habit, then everything's going to be fixed. It's like there are layers to what we're trying to do, and so we get there, and it's about asking the right questions. And then I just use the right tools to help you become more self-aware and figure out what your truth is in that whole process.
But again, listeners, reach out, peterteuscher.com, and it's peterteuscher.com. And I haven't even said it yet, but I know we're going to have some more listeners just because you're in Hamburg, Germany. But for some reason, this podcast, we have a lot of listeners in Germany. And so if you're tuning in from Germany, thank you so much. We love you. And if you have any other guests out there, we've had a few from Germany that have been incredible. But reach out to me. Jeff at c4leaders.org is my email. And we'd love to reach out to a guest that you would like and get them on the show. Yeah, Peter, this has been incredible. And I thank you so much for sharing all your insight and just your life. And I have one last question for you, and it's how we like to end the show. There's a quote from John Alston that says, the only thing you take with you when you're gone is what you leave behind. And you're a young man, and let's give you another 50 years of living, and you're on your deathbed now, to mix in my nursing background. And you're surrounded by all the people that have been essential in your life, and you're feeling amazing, and you're getting ready to take your last breath. What is it that you want to leave behind with the people that you've served and have been in your life?
Well, what I'd like most for people to take from me, or what I'd most like to believe to leave behind, is this recognition that you're good enough as you are, and you have so much potential that will never be fully realized. I think that belief in yourself is something that I would like to give to everyone as a gift, and that's why I do the work that I do. So yeah, just this belief in yourself, and that usually is what effect I have on people that come to me for coaching, and also the people around me. Yeah, I hope that's something that I'm leaving to people.
I love it. It's been incredible. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and expertise with us. Again, listeners, it's been season 4, episode 18 with Peter Teuscher, coming from Hamburg, Germany. His website again, peterteuscher.com. And boom, baby, that just happened. We out.